And we welcome to noise11.com Madison McFerrin to talk about your new album, your
Yeah,
first album, and it's been a long time coming.
it has. It has. I'm very excited about it. It's around the corner. I can't believe it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, we've been hearing of you over, 8 years, to 2016, going back to when you were putting music out back then. And back then, it was more a cappella, wasn't it? You've
Mhm.
evolved musically.
As one hopes to do, the acapella stuff wasn't really what I had intended to start with, but it is what I ended up putting out and kind of getting some traction with. And I'm just grateful that that music was able to get me all around the world, really.
Because you are a graduate of Berkeley School of Music, aren't you? A student of Berkeley School of Music. What were you studying at Berkeley?
I graduated with a bachelor's degree in professional music, and I'm a professional musician now. So there you go.
Professional music. They've actually got the word in there.
Yeah, it's called pro music. That's what they say. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so when you do a song, then do you write the lyric to match the music, or the music to match the lyric?
Um, so you worded that in an interesting way because I write the lyrics to match the music. Um, the music always comes first. I write the music and the melody, and the lyrics come last. Oftentimes because the melody is really what I'm trying to find. That's the thing that I enjoy the most in writing, is finding interesting melodies. And lots of times you can become attached to a melody that you like, but certain words won't fit into it, just in terms of how it fits in your voice, like with the vowel sounds and whatnot. And so 9 times out of 10, I'm writing the lyrics to match the music that I've written because I'm so drawn to the melody. I will say, though, I just released a song today. It's the last single off before I released the record. It's called Utah. And that is one of the very few songs where I actually wrote the lyrics first. But I will say I heard the lyrics and the melody kind of at the same time, but I rarely write from that direction.
Utah is an interesting song, quite a potent lyric. What are you telling us, Madison McFerrin, in Utah?
So during the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, there's still a global pandemic happening. When everything got shut down, the CDC was saying that the safest way to travel was by car and camping. And at the time, my fiance and I, well, now fiance and I, we lived in Brooklyn. His family's in Chicago, and my parents are in California. And so the only way we were going to be able to see them was to drive. So we drove cross country, and we liked it so much that we did it 2 years in a row. It just so happened that in 2020, on the way to the West Coast, we passed through Utah and got into a massive argument. And then in 2021, we passed through Utah when we were driving back east, and we got into a major argument again. And so that the night of the second argument, I wrote the song because I was like, what is it about this state? Why we've only gone through it 2 times, and each time there's been some crazy energy happening. And so as an artist does, I turned it into art.
Yes. Some of the other songs on the album also talk about real experiences, and not, so pleasant experiences. Please Don't Leave Me Now
Mm-hmm.
is another autobiographical song.
Yeah. I this same fiance, and in the same car, RIP, we were driving from Brooklyn to Chicago, which is something that we had done several times. And when we were just about 90 minutes away, I was merging from the right lane into the left lane, hit a patch of black ice, spun out 360, and then flipped upside down into a ditch. And we ended up walking away without a scratch, which was really remarkable. I honestly, by the grace of God, truly, whatever energy was looking out for us was definitely looking out for us that day or that night. And it was just such a surreal moment, being faced with a situation that could have easily turned fatal. I'm so grateful to still be here and that we both were able to walk away. And it was right before the Thanksgiving holiday here, and my oldest brother Taylor had just had a child, and it was going to be the first time that I was spending a lot of time with this child. And so the idea that I could have died before spending any time with my little nephew, it's really heartbreaking. But it was a very reaffirming moment of like, okay, I'm supposed to be here for a reason. And I felt very drawn to writing a song about that. And it was the first song that I wrote after the car accident.
A lot of the songs about your experiences, like Stay Away From Me, could sound like a very interesting experience. Is that something that you went through as well?
That mostly has to do with, living through the experience of being a human being filled with anxiety and self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and just trying to navigate pushing through that. And a lot of it, that song in particular, it's actually the first song that I finished off of the album. And I just started producing during the pandemic, and after I wrote that song, I felt a lot of release from just a lot of the built up anxiety that I had gotten from this period of time. I wrote it in December 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And, 2020 was so traumatic, like just from everything that was happening globally, especially here in the States. Obviously, like over 1 million people died. Like it has been an incredibly traumatic period. And having that year that was supposed to be when I was touring my last EP, and I had really felt a lot of positive momentum around my career, having what kind of felt like the rug pulled out from underneath me. And what did that mean for my career? Was I going to be able to sustain the life that I had envisioned for myself? Just built up so much. And so that song was very much like a cathartic way of being like, did I miss my moment? Have I missed my time? And just saying, no, like I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I'm still making music. And, I'm super proud of that song. I was really grateful to have been able to share it with the world as the first single.
You talked in there for a moment about producing, which you have done with this record. Your brother Taylor has previously produced you. Is self-production, your own production, doing it yourself, something new for you?
Yeah, I just started during the pandemic. It was something that I had the equipment for a little bit, but I just didn't have the time. I was touring a lot. In 2019 alone, I think I went to Europe like 9 times. Like I was just not home that much. And when I was, I just kind of wanted to relax. But then all of a sudden, we're forced to be home for months on end and gigs aren't happening. And I still needed to express myself musically. And so I just started tapping into this technology that I had access to and decided to go for it. And I really enjoyed it. It ended up being something that I hadn't really anticipated loving as much as I do now.
You utilize the family talents on this record. Your father, who was Bobby McFerrin, who had a #1 hit in Australia back in, I think, was it 1988? Don't Worry, Be Happy. Yeah. Yeah, so he was top of the Australian chart at one point. There's another reason for you to come down to Australia.
All right. Listen, I'm going to come sometime.
Yeah, but he's on your new record.
Mm-hmm. He's actually the only feature on the record, which, I think is kind of special.
Yeah. How does that conversation go? Is that a phone call and Dad, will you come to the studio? How's it work?
Well, actually, he's on the record for a particular reason. It's not just because I was like, oh, I want to have a record with my dad. A lot of it was actually, or not a lot, the reason why I had asked him to be on the record was because of the topic of the song. The song is called Run, and in the May 2020, I had a distant cousin, a third cousin who I've never met before. He reached out to me on ancestry.com, just saying like, hey, like I'm your cousin. We should chat. I have some stories about our family. And I was really interested to know more about that. So we had a phone call, and he told me that our great, great, great grandmother had escaped from slavery. And they weren't sure about what the exact story was, but that it was known that she had run away. And I was incredibly inspired by that story. And just to know that someone with that resilience is a direct like I'm a direct descendant of theirs, which I know that I'm descended from incredibly resilient people. But to hear the story of my great 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 grandmother was incredibly inspiring. And so I wanted to write a song from the perspective of the creator, giving her the strength to run away. And because my father is also her descendant, that's his great great grandmother, I thought that it was very fitting to have him be a part of the song, because it's supposed to honor this person. It's honoring our collective ancestor. And I am so grateful that he blessed the track. My words are meant to be from the creator, and he is kind of meant to be like the spiritual juju. And I'm incredibly proud of how it turned out.
Do you know how old your ancestor, your great great grandmother, would have been around that time?
I'm not sure. I don't have as much information as I would like, but
yeah. So she could have been younger than you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Probably was.
What a great story. You do have live shows coming up. In fact, you've just performed at South by Southwest. I think you've done that a couple of times over the years, haven't you? How did 2023 go for you?
This year was great. This was the first time I went with a band. It was my third time performing. My first time was in 2018, and then again last year in 2022. And there was a huge difference between 2018 and 2022. Last year was the first year the festival was coming back, and there was still a lot of COVID precautions. There was definitely a COVID outbreak. I knew a couple of people who got COVID last year at South by. And so it was a different feel. And this year coming back definitely felt more akin to what it had been like before. And being able to do it with a band was also really great. Just being able to share the new music in that way and hear the audience responses. And just now that I'm kind of transitioning into a larger show, it's nice to be able to have that experience with these other people and meeting the audience. And like South by, like we had a great time. I always eat some great barbecue. So, I'm down.
It's always about the barbecue, isn't it?
Always about the barbecue.
It's always, yes. Yes.
Well, also not just barbecue. I will shout out Austin. They have great food. Yeah. I am a fan of the food in Austin. I love food. I love good food. And so any city that has good food really has my heart. And Austin definitely does. So shout out to you, Austin.
Well, I guess the bad news is England doesn't have a reputation for good food, and you're going there in July. You might have to take some takeout.
England has good food that is made by like immigrants. Like they've got some great Indian food.
Yep.
There's some great West Indian food, some great French food. They know how to facilitate.
Just stay away from the chips and egg and the warm beer.
Right, exactly. But I always have a lot of fun in England. London always shows me so much love. They are consistently in like my top 3 most listeners, people who pay attention. And the last time I was in London, I played at Colours Hoxton and it sold out. And I just always feel a lot of love in the UK. So I'm excited to go back.
Well, the new album, I hope you can forgive me. And just 10 tracks clocking in at just 26 minutes and 38 seconds. I note as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very concise.
Yeah. That was intentional. I wrote all of it while I was still living in Brooklyn. I recently relocated to Los Angeles. But part of the intention was I wanted people to be able to listen to the whole album on a subway commute, because I really love albums and whole bodies of work. And unfortunately, with how things go these days, there's not a lot of time to like sit and listen to a full body of work. And I really wrote this album to be an album. Obviously I've released 4 singles as of today, and I think all of the tracks are great. But I wanted to make sure that this was something I wanted people to be able to ingest the whole album. And I actually, when I was writing it with the intention of it being this like, oh, okay, you can listen on your subway commute, I didn't know that in Los Angeles, the average commute time is also 30 minutes. So worked out in general.
Good stuff. You've got a very interesting light coming across your shoulder.
Oh, I hadn't realized that at first, but maybe it's just like the universe beaming in.
We love a studio audience. Madison, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we will see you in Australia. I would love that.
You will see me in Australia, 100%. I'm going to be there sometime. I don't know when, but mark my words.
We'll take that as a promise.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.